Okay, so a bit of an update, or continuation, I guess, of the Dante build video that I put out last week, titled The Devil Hunter. I will leave a link to it in the description if you check that out, and I would recommend that you do. Always, a lot of the things I say in this video aren't going to make sense. But I was requested to do a follow-up video doing a Vergil build. Now, I'm gonna curb any disappointment right off the bat. Creating a Vergil build in this game is virtually impossible, at least to recreate faithfully. I mean, I considered doing basically the same thing as the Dante build, but swapping out the 4 levels of Rogue for maybe 4 levels of Fighter, to kind of get action surge and like just kind of show a different way of doing kind of like the extended damage, because obviously Vergil doesn't use a ranged weapon, instead he uses his summoned swords. So I kind of wanted to lean more into just using you know, your main hand weapon instead of being able to combo ranged weapons and melee weapons. However, while I do not think this is necessarily a very good build for encapsulating Vergil, considering the tools you have are very limited. For example, being able to get summoned swords, there is one spell in the game that I would consider that's even remotely close to it, and even then it's not a very good example. So, and obviously there's no usable katana in this game. There is a katana in this game, but you cannot use it, and you can't even pick it up because it's a fake. But what I've decided to do instead is basically take the concept I made with Dante and kind of modify it a bit. Basically, the goals remain the same. We're going for long combos, but instead of going for combos with ranged and damaged weapons, yes, ranged and melee weapons, we're going to be focusing entirely on the melee aspect. So, and in addition to this, instead of using a big greatsword for combos, we're going to be using a one-handed weapon. And we're going to lean as much into that one-handed aspect as we can, because, you know, Vergil's main method of fighting is using one-handed weaponry. We've also incorporated various other little pieces of Vergil's kit. We've got our teleports, we have our ranged magic attacks. Spoiler alert, we're going to be using magic in this build for our ranged damage. And I've also been able to incorporate way more just, I guess, self-sustaining like combos, because a big thing about the Dante build was it kind of relied on another party member casting haste in order to get its maximum combo potential, whereas in this case, much more fitting for Vergil, is everything is packed into this build. You could run this build Lone Wolf style and you would get the maximum possible DPS you could get out of it, I guess. I don't know if DPS is the right term for D&D, but you get the point. So, I'm going to dive straight into it. I'll explain each class as I did before, and why I made these choices instead of something more similar to the Dante build, and then at the end I will go over the equipment. I will be spoiling the fact that the equipment exists, but in this case I'm going to do something a bit different. I won't be explaining how to get it in the video. Instead, I will leave a link in the description to the wiki page for this game, for the item, that will tell you how to get it. I will also leave some extra information down there that I won't be discussing in this video, again for spoiler reasons, so be sure to go down there to get every single detail for the build, but I will go over it here. Right, so, as I kind of hinted at before, we are going to be starting with fighting. Now this is really important because it's going to get us a few things. A fighting style, which is going to be very important. B, it's going to give us, you know, all the good fighter stuff. We're going to get proficiency with pretty much every weapon, proficiency with every armor, and a bunch of skills. But another super important thing it's going to give us is constitution proficiency for our saving throws, which will help us maintain our spell concentration, and that is super important. So, let's go over to the fighting style. Fighting style we are going to be going with is dueling. Obviously, if we're going to be wielding a one-handed weapon and nothing else, getting an additional 2 damage with that weapon is absolutely nothing to sneeze at, and is pretty much the only fighting style we're going to use or need. So, make sure you pick up dueling here. As for ability scores, a little bit different to the Dante build. We're still going to be keeping the 10 Constitution because we're going to be getting a certain item that's going to help us with that later. And for our Dexterity, we're going to put it straight up to 17, and we'll be able to get that all the way to 20 later with not too much issue. And then we want our Charisma at 16, taking our +1 there. And the last couple of stats you can play around with, but I kind of put Wisdom at 14 because that gives you better perception checks and stuff and better saving throws against like charm effects. So I would take an 8 in Intelligence and Strength here. As for your proficiencies, take whichever ones you want. I've just kind of got Perception, Insight, and Arcana just because that felt right to me. We've already got Intimidation and Medicine because of the Haunted One background, because this is a Dark Urge character. Now, with the Dante character, the Dark Urge was optional. With this character, it is not, I think. I could be wrong about this. But basically, if you take the Dark Urge roll, you are going to get access to A, a double trigger form later on, and B, this specific piece of armor we're wearing, because this is not actually the same piece of armor used in the last build. I have actually, the only thing I've like taken from the old build is one item. Everything else is completely different. So this is actually a completely unique build compared to the old one, which I think is pretty cool. But yep, this is the final ability scores you want. Let's move on. Yep. Oh, and as a disclaimer as well, I probably put this at the beginning of the video, but I'll mention it again here. I did use mods to get to this build quickly. As you can see, I'm in Act 1, but I'm level 12. And I've got all this gear. So, but I wanted to theorycraft this build. I have tested it in combat. Obviously, I've not done a full playthrough of it, but I have tested it in combat. And I will be showing a sort of showcase against the opening tutorial boss at the end of the video, because another request of mine was to actually show the builds in action, and from here on out I'm going to attempt to do so, using that kind of fight as a basis for the build's power. As you will see, this build is nothing to sneeze at, but let's get into the levels. Next up, we're going to be sticking with Fighter, and we're actually going to be here for quite a while. It is quite an important subclass for this build for a few reasons. Obviously, one of the most important things being Action Surge. Now, Action Surge was kind of the big thing that we missed in the Dante build, because obviously it gives you a whole extra action to use that turn once per short rest. Here it is going to extend our combos pretty much once per battle. So you are going to be getting a lot of use out of this, and it's obviously pretty great to have if you just want to do that first round. Absolute Nova damage. So, moving on. Now, this is where this is going to be kind of a choose your own adventure thing, because we're staying with Fighter, but you have an couple of options here. I'll explain the pros and cons of both, and what I would personally choose out of two, but both options work pretty well depending on what you want out of the build. So, your subclass. You can choose here. I mean, you can choose any of them. I mean, it's your build. But you kind of have an option between Battlemaster and Eldritch Knight. Now, if you go with Battlemaster, you will get 3 maneuvers, which will kind of act similarly to the flourishes that you get from the Sword's Bard, but in my opinion, a bit weaker. Because you will get less of them per short rest, and they kind of do less overall. It's the fact that you only get to pick 3 of them, whereas with the Swords Bard you get to have 6 automatically. But hey ho, it's down to preference. In the showing off of the build I do later in the video, I do have Battlemaster, as that was my first instinct, so you will get to see kind of how that works in this build. And if you were to take the maneuvers, I mean, it's a pick your favorite type thing, it doesn't really matter, but I would personally take Trip Attack, probably Precision Attack, and the last one's kind of up to you. Riposte is quite good. I mean, they're all good, just choose your favorites here. So if you want something a bit more of a stylish kind of flourish, similar to the Swords Bard, go with Battlemaster. However, I am going to be choosing Eldritch Knight, and because in practice, when I tested with this build over a few encounters, I found that this build, if you go Battlemaster, it lacks enough spell slots to be consistent over long periods of time. So if you're not able to take a lot of short rests, or you're not able to take a lot of long rests, especially in Tactician, where this build was tested, it's going to feel really, really underpowered, especially at those lower levels. You are going to struggle a lot, I think, when you're just using basic equipment. So I think that Eldritch Knight, at the end of it, I mean, what you could do is, as you're leveling this build, go with Battlemaster, then when you've got everything else in order, respec into Eldritch Knight. What Eldritch Knight is going to do is it's going to give us a few things. One, it's going to give us more spells. Yes, we dumped Intelligence, which is what Eldritch Knight uses for his casting, but much like how we used Bard and Paladin in the Dante build, you can basically load up your Eldritch Knight with spells that are utility-based but don't require the use of either spell slots or, you know, damage modifiers. And we're going to be doing things a little bit differently with this build. We are going to be using our spells quite actively in combat, so we're going to be taking less of the ritual options, but you will still be able to get a lot of versatility out of this build and more spell slots. For example, if you go just Battlemaster, by the time you get to the end of this build, you will only have 3 level 3 spell slots as your maximum. Whereas if you go with Eldritch Knight here, you get 2 level 4 slots on top of that, which gives you way more consistency. So I would definitely recommend Eldritch Knight, if not at the start, later on. Cantrips. So the way I kind of wanted to do Vergil's kind of ranged attacks, I mean, obviously blue and I guess black in DMC5, which I've kind of replicated here with the current look. Basically he just has kind of blue magic. His Summon Swords, his Mirage Edge, you know, all of his flair and pizzazz is kind of blue. So basically what you're going to want to do with this is take blue attacks. So in my opinion, if you want to go full Vergil, start off with Ray of Frost and Shocking Grasp. Shocking Grasp may seem a bit strange, but there's going to be a reason for that later. As for your spells, Shield and Magic Missile, easy go-to, good ranged option, good defensive option, nothing wrong here. You can absolutely go with that. I mean, you could replace Magic Missile with Witch Bolt if you really want that blue magic, but spoiler alert, this is a terrible spell, one of the worst ones ever made. And then you get a spell from the expanded spell list. Now, again, you would think to take Ice Knife here. In my opinion, Ice Knife is the closest you can get to Vergil's Summon Swords. But I don't really want to take it here because it would use our intelligence for the attack and damage modifiers, and it would suck. So we're going to be taking it later as a different multi-class, but we're not taking it here. So for this slot, you can take whatever you want. You could go for Enhanced Sleep, Disguise Self, any of the like ritual spells that we discussed in the last build. I would personally just take Featherfall here because I think it's the most useful overall, especially since we're going to be getting Longstrider later in through a method you might not be expecting. So we'll go with that for now, but pick your poison. Apologies if I'm going even faster than last time, by the way, because I did not expect my last video to be nearly an hour long, and I'm trying to avoid that here for the sake of everyone's time, including myself. So, we're going to stick with Fighter for level 4. This is going to give us a few things. One, a new spell. There's not really much options here, because pretty much all of these are going to use your attack and damage modifier. Mage armor we don't need, because we're going to be wearing armor. So, I mean, you can take Protection from Evil and Good. It has some niche uses, but I don't think you're ever really going to be casting it. You may think, oh, why not take Thunderwave here, because even if you're not doing a lot of damage, you can still push people away. You're going to be getting this for free later, so I would honestly just take this, unless you really want to take something else here, but I would just take Protection from Evil and Good, because it's the only one you could get maybe any real use out of. Now, for your first feat, I did originally think to take Defensive Duelist, and I did in my showcase, because, well, we're using a finesse weapon, spoilers, with, that we're proficient with, and you can use your reaction to get your proficiency, to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class. I thought, wow, this is really, really good, until I realized, wow, I have way more better options to raise AC in this build, that I really don't feel like we need Defensive Duelist. I think it is a waste. So we're just going to take an ability score improvement for now, and I'm kind of going to on the fly decide what to do later, because we're actually getting 3 feats in this build, which is cool. So you're going to want to put your dexterity right up to 19, and then later, using Auntie Ethel's Boon, which is a permanent +1 to any stat. I forgot to mention that in my Dante video, so I added it in post. But so what you're going to do is you bump it up to You bump your dex up to 19, use Anti-Ethel Spoon to put it up to 20, and that's your dexterity maxed out for this build. Pretty good. So take your 19 in dex here. Next up, we are going to Fighter level 5, which of course gets us the oh so sweet extra attack, which is going to allow us to continue our combos even longer. So now you have attack once, extra attack, action surge, third attack. You're already hitting 3 attacks at level 5, at least once per combat. Pretty good. Next up, Fighter level 6, which is going to be our final level of Fighter, because if you didn't know, as a Fighter, you actually get another feat at level 6. So, here we're going to take one that you might not be expecting. We're going to be taking Warcaster. Now, a huge part of this build is our ability to maintain concentration on haste. So, by taking Warcaster, in addition to our Constitution saving for proficiency, Warcaster gives us advantage on those saving throws. So, we are basically never going to drop haste unless you get really, really unlucky, which is huge for this build, because obviously dropping haste when you're casting on yourself basically leaves you wide open, and in a game like Tactician, you could just be dead. So, absolutely want to take Warcaster at some point in your build. Here, we're taking it at level 6 here, which is a pretty good place since we're going to be multi-classing in the next level. Next up, we're at Fighter level 7, and we're not going to take it. No. Obviously, as I've explained earlier, I wanted to use ranged magic, but I didn't know exactly how to go about that. My initial thought was leaning towards Wizard, where you could get a lot of different spells, but I didn't feel like there were any Wizard subclasses that really gave this build any additional utility that was worth grabbing. So I decided to kind of take the cheapo option, make this into another Charisma caster, and take Sorcerer. Because as I was kind of going through it, like, I went over everything. I went Bard, I went Cleric, I went even round to Paladin to see if I could get something out of that. And nothing really spoke to me until a certain tune, a certain lyric played in the back of my head. I did a long dramatic pause there so that editing me can put in, you know, the thing you just heard. So we're going to be taking Sorcerer. For cantrips, well, we've already got Rare Frost and Shocking Grasp. Nothing really to it there. Although I have just realised I made a slight mistake. We're going to want to take those cantrips here, and not with Eldritch Knight Fighter, because of the damage modifiers. So that's my bad. We'll take those here. I think instead of like what we chose for Eldritch Knight, you would take Friends and Blade Ward. So, and then for your last two, you can take Fireball or whatever you want to take. Mage Hand, a minor option for me. But basically, you would want to take these here, and then take Friends and Blade Ward as an Eldritch Knight. My apologies, I'm doing this off script, and I kind of forgot myself a bit. So, for all of those of you that were screaming at me the whole time for being an idiot for taking those cantrips with Eldritch Knight, there you go. I've realised my mistake halfway through. I'm recording this late at night. Now, as for your spells, this is where you're going to want to take Ice Knife for your Summoned Sword, and whatever you want for your second one, you could take Disguise Self, False Life, Enhanced Sleep. Like I say, don't take Longstrider, even though it's not actually an option here, so I don't know why I said that. I guess you, like I said, just take whatever you want. It will say you don't already have Shield here. You don't believe it. It's a visual glitch, because technically Shield isn't added to your spell list. It's just added as a reaction. Don't ask me why, but you do have it. And again, don't take Thunderwave here, unless you want to take it now and replace it later, because you are going to be getting it for free later, because, spoiler alert, we are the storm that is approaching. We are taking Storm Sorcery. I don't know why I keep saying spoiler alert. This is going to give us Tempestuous Magic at level 1, which lets you cast Fly as a bonus action, which allows you to disengage from combat without taking opportunity attacks and be able to get up to places that are a bit out of your reach. It's a good option to have in the kind of mid-game anyway, or just a good movement option to have. It gives us a little bit more flexibility with our movement, but it's not really worth taking in combat as much as you would think, as we're going to be mainly using our bonus action for something else. We're taking Storm Sorcery here, because I thought it was just too funny. So, for Sorcerer level 2, we are going to be taking another spell. Again, just grab whatever you feel is appropriate here. You take False Life if you want to be able to get free temporary hit points all the time. You could take Expeditious Retreat if you want to dash as a bonus action. That could actually be pretty good since we're not going to be taking Rope at all here, so that is a good option. Well, I will take that just as an example, but again, take whatever you feel is right. This is important. Twin Spell. If you're going to be a person casting haste, you always want Twin Spell. Free haste on another person is not something to snuff at, especially when we're going to be so good at keeping concentration. Your next magic is whatever you want. I personally like Distance Spell because it lets me make sure that if something is really far away, I still get to hit it. Level 9, we're going to be a Sorcerer 3, and that means we're going to be getting one of the most important parts of our build. Our level 2 spell. Wait, I'm kidding. But we are getting Misty Step here, which is basically Vergil's Trickster style teleport. Perfect, we've covered that basis, and we get to use it more than once per short rest, which is an advantage over the Dante build. But we get Quicken Spell. If you've ever played a sorcerer, you know how good this is, and it's even better in Baldur's Gate 3 because you're not restricted to the whole spell cantrip restriction that comes with 5e. You could just go boom, full cast a spell, boom, full cast a spell, and just absolutely go for mega damage. So now you have an option to do multiple ranged attacks or multiple close range attacks. I think that's pretty cool. That kind of covers the, you know, kind of ranged and physical combo aspect of this whole Devil May Cry thing. So I think it's doing pretty well. Replace the spell if you want, but we don't need to. Level 10, we're a Sorcerer 4. This gives us our final feat now. Cantrip, take whatever you like. Spells. You do get another level 2 spell here. Now, if you kind of want to play more into the Vergil aspect, you kind of want to get something close to his clone summoning ability that he gets in DMC5. You can take Mirror Image, which is just another big bump to your AC, and what I would personally recommend for this build, so I would grab that. Or you could grab Scorching Ray if you want a better kind of ranged option, but it's not very Vergil-like here, so we're going to stick with Mirror Image. Now for the feat, now originally, like I said, I went with Defensive Duelist for that armor class bonus, but I really don't think it's needed, especially when we're going to be using our reaction for something else anyway. So you could take an ability score improvement here, maybe bump up your wisdom or your charisma, or you could just find something you like. You could take Lucky, which could let you get advantage on attack rolls. You could get Magic Initiate Bard if you want Vicious Mockery for the taunt. That's absolutely an option, but I wouldn't regularly recommend it if you're power building, but if you want to go for the full DMC kit, then that's what you could go with. You could get Martial Adept if you still want to be able to use that's a couple of the Battlemaster maneuvers, even if you're taking Eldritch Knight. Or if you want to get a couple of more on top of the 3 you already get from Battlemaster, that's an option. You can take the Mobile feat if you want more maneuverability. You don't provoke opportunity attacks, so you can get a bit out of the Mobile feat. I think that's also an option. Take whatever you want here. There's not really a wrong answer to this, because our build is already going to be at full power regardless of what you take here. If you feel like you want that extra AC from Defensive Duelist, take it. You've got so many options here. Pick your poison. I will take an ability score improvement here and bump up my charisma to 18. At level 11, we're a Sorcerer, which is going to get us another spell. We're now up to level 3 spells, which means we get that oh so sweet haste. Unfortunately, yes, this does mean it's taking us to a total level 11 to get the final big combo piece of our build, and probably one of the most important. So if you wanted to maybe take one level of Fighter, get to level 6 Sorcerer first, and then come back to Fighter afterwards, that could work. Just pick your battles here, do whatever you want to do. It's whatever you like. Now we are also actually going to be replacing a spell here. Take out whatever you don't want. I'll take out Expeditious Retreat, and I'll take Disguise Self out. And we are going to replace it with Lightning Bolt. This is our big blue magic damaged ranged attack. That is going to just do mega damage. You can cast it twice. It's a big lightning damage spell. If you've not used Lightning Bolt before, it's so good. And we have to take it because, like I said, we are the storm that is approaching, and that means we bring the lightning. And here we are at Sorcerer level 6, which is actually where we get a ton of cool things from our subclass. We get Art of the Storm, which when you cast a level 1 or higher spell that deals lightning or thunder damage, you cause a small local lightning storm. All enemies within 6 meters take 3 lightning damage or 3 thunder damage. Pretty cool. You get to choose it when you cast a spell. You also gain resistance to lightning and thunder damage, and resistance is always great to have. You also get 5 spells for free, and this is really cool. All lightning. As cool as this spell is, it requires your concentration, so you're probably never ever going to use it with a haste, which sucks because it's so thematic, but whatever. If you want that little different way of doing lightning damage and you're not planning on casting haste, this does exist. Sleet Storm, another one that requires concentration for some reason. You're probably not going to use it, but you can make an icy surface. Gust of Wind, this is really useful if you're getting hit with poison clouds or blindness. This is a really good utility spell. Keep this one on you. Create or Destroy Water. This is actually a sleeper hit for being super broken. I have to give full credit to Colby from D&D Deep Dive, D4, for finding the combo of using Create Water to make an enemy wet, then casting Lightning Bolt on them to do double damage because it makes them vulnerable. He also combined it with a Storm Tempest Cleric to get the Destructive Wrath feature to basically do 120 damage on a Lightning Bolt. I tried it in one of my runs and it was so broken. Very, very cool. But basically, in our build, since we're not going to be taking that, we still get kind of half the package here. You cast Create or Destroy Water, then Quicken Spell a Lightning Bolt on a group of enemies, and they will just get devastated. Really, really powerful combo. Not very Vergil-y, but still really cool. And you also get Thunder Wave for free. Told you you'd get it later. Level 12. Whoops. And then you get another 3rd level spell. I mean, Counterspell. There might be something here that's more thematic, but honestly, Counterspell is Counterspell. It's such a good thing to have. It just shuts down so many things. So you can take Counterspell, you can take Blink. It also kind of works for Vergil, I guess. Not really, but just take Counterspell. And with that, we are done. We have all of our magic, all of our kind of attacks here, and look, we have one more spell slot than the Dante build. But now, on its own, even I would agree this build is not powerful. It is pretty suboptimal, all things considered. But where it gets really strong is the equipment. This is going to blow your mind. So, I was scouring the wiki, looking for a weapon to replace the Yamato. I originally went to scimitars because that's kind of close to a katana, but none of them really suited me, but I really wanted a one-handed finesse weapon, and to be in contrast to Dante's big strength attacks. I need this weapon here. This is called the Duelist's Prerogative. If you know, you know, this is crazy. So you get 1d8 plus 7 piercing, plus an extra 2 piercing, which I think is coming from another piece of equipment. 3 1d4 necrotic damage. It's a legendary weapon with a +3 enchantment. In your main hand, you get the Elegant Duelist feature. While your offhand is empty, you score a critical hit when rolling a 19. Moreover, you gain an additional reaction per turn. Now that, in of itself, is crazy, and it also kind of phonetically mirrors the fact that Dante has 2 bonus action, Vergil has 2 reaction. It's cool, I like it. But this also has something you can do on your reaction. Withering Cut. On a hit with a melee weapon, use a reaction to deal additional necrotic damage equal to your proficiency bonus. So you're getting all the damage you see at the top here, plus extra necrotic damage equal to your proficiency bonus. But it doesn't end there. You also get Challenge to a Duel. Challenge an enemy to attack only you, inflict bleeding on the target. A free turn buff, you use as a bonus action to inflict the bleeding status effect, and also get Compelled Duel out of the mix. Impressive, but this is the kicker. Duelist Enthusiasm. While you are not dual wielding, you can make an additional melee attack with the dueler. So, let's just go over every attack you could do. Let's consider this as the first round of combat. You cast haste. If you have haste on you before the battle, great. Or you can cast haste during the battle. Let's just say you have haste. You get your 2 attacks, your attack and your extra attack. But you get your haste, attack and extra attack. That's 4 attacks. Action surge for a 5th attack. Bonus action duelist enthusiasm for a 6th attack. This is the same as Dante, except you are completely self-sufficient. And you get a lot of panache because you get some alternative animations when you attack a few times with like a bonus action and such. And you also get things like the flourish, piercing strike, which I definitely recommend using, weakening strike. You do get a lot of things to kind of get that stylish aspect to the build. Absolutely worth it. This is insane. Like, again, I will leave a description below for any items shown here so you know how to get them in your playthrough. So, let's have a look at the armor and the accessories. I'll start with the obvious ones over here on the right first. Amulet of Greater Health. You saw this one coming if you saw the last video. I tried to replace this with something else to be unique. I even played around with the idea of a build that uses lightning charges as like a kind of unique mechanic, but it was just very odd and not really very powerful. I will experiment with that more in the future. But the Amulet of Greater Health just means we don't have to level our Constitution, which means we get to leave this build with 20 Dex and 20 Charisma and a 23 in Constitution. It is just, it's great. You can't go wrong with it. It's really easy to get once you hit Act 3. Just get this thing. It is definitely worth it. We'll go over the rings quick and then the meat and potatoes, which is the armor. Ring of Protection. I had real trouble finding rings for this build because, again, I didn't want to repeat too much from the Dante build. So I want the Ring of Protection here because we're not getting our armor class buffs from certain other aspects that the Dante build had. So we get Ring of Protection here, which gives us +1 armor class and saving throws. That makes our concentration even more powerful. Definitely worth it. I will say that this is a slight spoiler. You may think that the quest for getting this will ruin certain aspects of Act 1. It actually doesn't, as long as you don't get caught. You'll know what I mean if you kind of look up a guide for the quest or something, but you can still progress normally, even if you nick the thing. Your other ring. Now, play around with this slot. I couldn't decide on anything. Take the regen ring. Take whatever you want to take. I actually went for the strange conduit ring. While concentrating on a spell, the wearer's weapons deal an additional 1 to 4 psychic damage. So, because you're pretty much always going to be wanting to concentrate on haste, or if you cast Friends, for example, you technically are always concentrating on that, so you would get this buff anyway. You get an additional psychic damage. The amount of different damage buffs you stack on this build is what leads to, like, damage. Like, you may think, oh, 1d4 repeated a few times, like 1d4 necrotic, 1d4 psychic. That doesn't really... That's not that much more. If you've played a monk, you know how much this can stack up on multiple attacks, and we are getting 6 of these damn things in a turn. 6, so think about it, like, this ring alone is 6d4. Like, that is a lot of damage. You can't say no to it. Bare minimum 6 extra damage. Let's move on to the other stuff. We're using the Birthright Hat, which is just a flat +2 to Charisma. That gets us up to Charisma 20. If you decide to go with a feat instead of the ability score improvement, you do get only 18, but I find that that's not a huge deal breaker. Your spells are still going to be quite powerful. The Cloak of Protection, same as the Ring of Protection, +1 armor class, +1 saving throw. Really good just to have on. And I liked going with a cloak here, because I feel like whereas Dante wears more of like a shorter jacket with shorter coattails, Vergil has that really long jacket, so having a cloak kind of on the back gives that same kind of silhouette profile, almost. So I quite liked having a cloak on this build. Now this is the difference here. So with the Dante build we wore the Elegant Studded Leather, which gave us the ability to use shield. This one is different. This is called the Barlist Armor. This is why you need to play a Dark Urge if you want to get this armor legitimately. I think you might be able to get it through a certain action you can do in a certain quest in Act 3, but I think the Dark Urge does make this kind of easier to get. Also, if you want double trigger, you want to play Dark Urge. The Ballist Armor. 14 armor class, same as the Elegant Studded Leather. You get the +2 bonus to initiative rolls, same as the Elegant Studded Leather, but this is the difference, and this is a game changer. You get the Aura of Murder. Enemies within 2 meters become vulnerable to piercing damage, unless they are resistant or immune to it. So, if an enemy does not resist piercing damage, you are dealing double damage on every single piercing attack you do. Guess what damage type a rapier uses? Piercing damage. For all 6 attacks you're doing, in addition to all the extra little d4s of damage you're getting, or the d6s or whatever you're using if you're using Battlemaster, you are dealing double piercing damage on every strike. This is nuclear damage. Vulnerable is an insane thing to get, and it's very, very rare. So, the Ballast Armor, I didn't even know this armor existed. It's so obscure and kind of weird to get. If you don't know how to get it, you'll probably miss it. But it is so, so, so powerful, and obviously stylish too. Next thing is Glove of the Duelist. While only holding 1 weapon in your main hand and nothing in your free hand, you gain a +2 bonus to melee weapon attack rolls. Just further guarantees those hits. I think it's pretty good. Now this is actually kind of a fun thing I found. The Boots of Persistence. You gain freedom of movement and Longstrider, plus a +1 to dex saves. So, Longstrider, which we had on the Dante build, increases our movement speed by 3 meters. Freedom of movement is that your movement speed cannot be reduced by difficult terrain, spells, or magical effects. You cannot be paralyzed or restrained, so you're always moving. Unless you're frightened, which can still happen. Weird how that's kind of an outlier. But yeah, that is the build. Basically, have high AC, plenty of ranged options to go nuclear either with magic or with your close range attacks, long stylish combos. But I need to address the elephant in the room here. Obviously, again, I'll put a spoiler warning here, but this was the same spoiler that was in the Dante video, so if you saw that, then it's fine. You can get Devil Trigger by getting the Slayer form, which is why I recommend playing the Dark Urge, and because Vergil is an antagonist and does do very evil things in the games, even though he kind of gets redeemed, you are more than within your roleplay to get the Slayer form for Devil Trigger here, so I feel like that is an advantage you would have over the Dante build, just from a roleplay perspective, so you can get that here. Especially since that with this build there's no real alternative way to get Devil Trigger, because we're not using the Baldur Giant Slayer for Giant form. But thing is obviously with my Dante build, I did a whole playthrough with that and played it from start to finish. With this, I have built it, and I have tested it, but I have not played through the whole game with it, so it might not be as much of a fun build to use early on. You're basically going to be playing as a pure fighter or a pure sorcerer, whichever way you go to start. And then it doesn't really change until you get to multi-classing and you get this equipment. And unfortunately, I think with the exception of I think the Gloves of the Duelist and the Protection Cloak, all of this equipment is from Act 3. So this build is not coming online until the mid to end game. Same as the Dante build, but at least with the Dante build, you had more options kind of in the mid to early game, whereas with this build, you are kind of a one-trick pony for the most part. And that is a problem. I feel like if you're going to run this build, this is a build that you maybe respec into later on. Play either a straight sorcerer or a straight fighter or something else, whatever is your preference, and respec into this later. Because I feel like with the overall look of the build, like with the cosplay and the sword, I think it's a cool looking build, but I don't think it's a very faithful recreation of Vergil. I feel like you're much closer to a faithful recreation of a Devil May Cry character with the Dante build. But I wanted to take a crack at building this, and there is probably a better way of doing it if you actually spent more time and did more research, because I didn't look into all the classes, but I did do as much research as I could. So this is a build where it's like, kind of use this as a base, but play around with it and see if you can get closer. I will kind of leave you with the showcase I did now. There won't be any commentary for this. I'll just kind of tacking it on to the end. so you get a general idea of how this build plays, and as a full disclaimer, I took Battlemaster in that example, so you're not seeing a final representation of this build that we have here. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this. I am going to do kind of more videos like these because they're actually quite quick and easy for me to make. And I quite enjoy discussing and theory crafting these Baldur's Gate 3 videos and builds. So I think I'm going to keep going with this, and I think I'm going to continue the Devil May Cry theme. My next build is going to be Nero. And with that build, I'm going to attempt to try and make a fun melee fighter, but also I'm going to try and incorporate as many of his different devil arms into the build as possible, which I think is going to be a really fun challenge. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. We now have Dante and Vergil in this game, so we'll be interested to hear which one is the overall favourite. It's probably Dante. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you with the Nero build.